Tonight on KQED Newsroom, demands for the president's tax returns and subpoenas of his former aides are leading to bitter fights. We'll hear from Silicon Valley Congressman Khanna, who sits on the House Oversight Committee. Also, a controversial state bill passed a key hurdle this week as lawmakers weigh numerous measures to tackle the housing crisis. And after thousands of performances in front of millions, a Bay Area icon, that's the world's longest-running musical revue, says goodbye. Hello and welcome to KQED Newsroom. I'm Thuy Vu. We begin with a flurry of action this week in the nation's capital. White House lawyers have signaled they plan to tell former officials, including Don McGahn, who was once White House counsel, to not comply with subpoenas for their testimony. The subpoenas came as House Democrats expanded their investigations of President Trump following the release of the Mueller report. And on Tuesday, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin once again missed a deadline to turn over the president's tax returns while awaiting guidance from the Justice Department. Here now to share his perspective on this and other political matters is Silicon Valley Congressman Khanna. He sits on the House Oversight Committee. Nice to have you back with us.
Thuy, great to be back on.
Well, the Trump administration is making clear that it plans to defy every single investigation that House Democrats throw his way. How are you planning to fight this and get the information you're seeking without letting this drag on for months, possibly?
Well, first of all, it's very unfortunate and it's unprecedented. Every White House fights with Congress. But this White House is not giving us a single document. They're not allowing a single aide to testify. I think Hillary Clinton's op-ed recently is instructive. During Watergate, Sam Erwin threatened to have the sergeant of arms go after folks who weren't testifying. We will hold these folks in contempt, and we will go to the courts to enforce the basic separation of powers.
Several members of Congress, including Jared Huffman and Maxine Waters of California, are calling for impeachment. Where do you stand on that?
I think we first have to do our jobs. I'm where Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton are. Let's have the committees do their work. Let's have people like Bob Mueller and Don McGahn, the former White House counsel, testify. Let it be on live television. And let's build the case for the American people first. Abraham Lincoln said public sentiment is everything. We have to carry the American people with us, and we first have to let the committees do their work.
But, you know, do Democratic lawmakers like Jared Huffman have a point when they say that, you know, there's plenty in the Mueller report to show obstruction of justice, and if you don't impeach now, you are not upholding your constitutional responsibility, but rather instead letting political calculations dictate this process? Do lawmakers on the Democratic side who hold this point of view have a point?
No one wants politics to dictate this. There's not going to be some poll that determines whether we should impeach or not. But I think the constitutional responsibility is to be deliberative and to let the process play out. I mean, we just got the Mueller report. We shouldn't rush to judgment. What we should do is have the hearings and see where the facts lead and have the testimonies. That's the process which was followed with Watergate. I mean, there was a year and a half of testimony in front of committees before a decision was made. The Republicans didn't follow that process with Clinton, and most people feel that that impeachment was premature. I think having a process and seeing where the facts lead is the most responsible way of fulfilling our obligation to the Constitution.
Meanwhile, the threat of Russian meddling remains. Just today, FBI Director Chris Wray called Russia's meddling in the U.S. Election process a significant counterintelligence threat. He says that they're campaigning 365 days a year to be disruptive to our process. Yet earlier in the week, Jared Kushner, the president's advisor and son-in-law, dismissed Russian election hacking, basically saying it's, quote, you know, maybe a couple of Facebook ads. So if you have this situation where the White House is essentially dismissing the threat, how confident can we be that our 2020 elections, the integrity of that will be safe from foreign interference?
Well, Chris Wray is absolutely right. The Mueller report concluded that there was sweeping and systematic Russian interference. This wasn't just a couple Facebook ads. The Russians hacked into county governments, into state governments, into former secretaries of state. And we remain very vulnerable to interference, not just from Russia, but from many foreign powers. That's why I've been trying to work on a bipartisan basis with Kevin McCarthy to say, let's do something to improve the coordination between law enforcement and tech platforms to make sure that we aren't vulnerable to these kind of cyber attacks.
And what are you doing with how are you and House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy going to attack this?
Well, what we need is legislation that gives greater resources for law enforcement to cooperate with tech companies and that has greater accountability for tech companies to eliminate possible foreign agents or bots on their platforms. We need real guidelines. I have an op-ed I published with Ambassador McFaul that goes through 3 or 4 very concrete steps of what tech companies can do in cooperating with law enforcement, and we want legislation that would make that possible.
What are some of the steps? What are the top 2?
Well, the first step would be that we need greater funding for law enforcement to work with tech so that there's a common platform which all tech companies participate in. So if there's, let's say, some agent that's a Russian agent on one platform, everyone can remove that. Right now, there's not that coordination. A second step would be that campaigns need to get security training from law enforcement agencies so they're not vulnerable to the type of hacks that John Podesta was vulnerable to with the Clinton campaign.
Let's talk about the 2020 presidential race as well. You're co-chair of Bernie Sanders' campaign. He's, of course, running for president in 2020. And yet you represent a district that's home to companies like Apple and Google, home to some of the biggest billionaires in the world, the type that Bernie Sanders likes to criticize. So what is it about Bernie Sanders that has made you become such a prominent and strong backer?
That's a great question. I'm very proud of a lot of the tech companies in my district and the innovation, but I see the income divide, not just in the country, but in my own district. The economic opportunities of the digital revolution have to be open to everyone. And I worked with Senator Sanders. We worked together to force Amazon to give folks a $15 minimum wage. And I'm proud of that work. What I want to see is greater equity for every American to have the rewards of the digital economy.
Joe Biden formally kicked off his presidential bid yesterday, making it now 20 Democrats vying for the presidency. Crowded field. What do you think a Democrat needs to do to really stand out from that pack and beat Donald Trump in 2020 and appeal to voters, whether it's in Peoria or Palo Alto?
We have to understand one of the biggest divides in this country is the rural-urban divide. Unfortunately, Donald Trump won 400 out of 500 counties in this country. And we have to offer a vision to rural communities. And many rural communities, by the way, are communities of color. But we have to offer them a vision. How are they going to participate in the jobs of the future? How are they going to be able to make good wages while staying in the communities they grew up in? I have been working to go to Appalachia, to go to Columbia, South Carolina, to go to Jefferson, Iowa, to take tech leaders and to help create jobs in those communities. I think that type of message will appeal to communities that feel left out.
Do you think there's a risk here? Because you touched on very much, kitchen, bread and butter issues. Do you think that there is a risk here that if Democrats keep on hammering away at the Mueller investigation and additional investigations of President Trump, that this is really going to get lost and you're hampering your own chances coming into 2020?
Well, it's a fine balancing act. We have 2 responsibilities. We have to talk about health care, jobs, education. What are we going to achieve for the American people? How are we going to help communities that have been left out? But we have a constitutional obligation to hold the president accountable. It goes back to our separation of powers. We have to do both. The challenge is, we've passed sweeping gun legislation. We've passed sweeping campaign finance reform. They happen to happen on days that Michael Cohen was testifying or Paul Manafort was sentenced, and they don't break through. So House Democrats have to figure out how do we break through in the media cycle for our positive agenda.
All right, Congressman Khanna, always a pleasure to have you here with us.
I always appreciate the opportunity.
On Wednesday, a controversial bill that requires some cities and counties to build more housing near transit centers cleared a key committee in the state legislature. But SB 50, as the measure is known, is just one of dozens of bills that are being considered to fix a statewide housing crisis. State Assembly member Buffy Wicks from Oakland has introduced several housing measures, including one that would require landlords to annually report evictions and rent hikes at their properties. But many of these new bills face strong opposition from local officials, including some mayors and city supervisors worried about gentrification and the loss of local control over zoning decisions. Here now to talk about housing are State Assembly member Buffy Wicks of Oakland and Palo Alto Mayor Eric Filseth. Nice to have you both here.
How are you?
Thank you for having us.
Assemblymember Wicks, you proposed 3 housing bills that would include creating a statewide rental data registry as well as developing more affordable housing. How much of a dent do you think this will make in the state's housing crisis?
Well, I think, honestly, we need an all-of-the-above strategy. I think the public's demanding that. You look at the challenges that our housing crisis has created. We need to build 3.5 million more homes here in California. We're 48th in the country in terms of the highest number of people with the fewest homes. That disparity is big. We've seen a 40% increase in homelessness in the last couple years in my communities. You know, we have a third of people in California that are paying 50% or more of their income into rent, which is significant, right? So we have big issues. I don't think there's going to be one thing that solves this problem, frankly.
There'll be a slew of
I think it's a
different types
package of things that involve building more homes, building low-income subsidized housing, building affordable housing, and building housing for what we call missing middle. Those folks that are middle class, they don't qualify for subsidized housing, but they also can't afford the current market rate. Right?
You're a big proponent of rent control, but critics of rent control say it seems unfair for property owners and that it will discourage additional development. Your thoughts on that?
So I think we could have a balanced approach on this. I think, one, we have to build more housing because we do have a supply and demand challenge, right? But what we also see is some people having evictions, or not evictions, but rent increases that lead to evictions of 50, 60, 70, 80%. And that's unattainable for most folks. So there was a bill that just came through committee yesterday. David Chu and I did this bill together. He's chair of the Housing Committee. It's an anti-gouging bill. It's modeled off of what we saw during the North Bay fires. There was anti-gouging legislation that was passed then to protect those folks that lost their homes. It's similar, it would go statewide, and it provides some ability for landlords to increase rent at a reasonable rate, but not what we're seeing, this sort of like 40, 50, 60% rate.
And Mayor Filseth, you have taken aim at some of the tech companies in your backyard, right? You've blamed tech giants like Google and Apple for contributing to the housing crisis. In your State of the City speech last month, you said tech companies should support communities by building housing for the new jobs that they create. But how can tech companies do that if you don't support changes in zoning laws that would allow for additional affordable housing, higher density housing?
Well, we've already done some zoning law changes. The question is, can zoning law changes alone make a big difference? If you look at housing production in Santa Clara County over the last 40 years, it's actually been pretty constant, 5,000 or 10,000 units a year, a little more in good times, a little less in bad times, and so forth. And so to look at that and say, gee, we think zoning alone is going to cause a 5 or 6x step function in housing production, because we produce jobs 5 times faster or 6 times faster than housing, and it's an unsustainable thing. So to look at that and say zoning is going to solve it, you know, there's no precedent for that. It's much more likely that it's going to take a massive amount of money. If you look at the history of the Valley coming out of the recession, I would characterize it like this. I mean, the Valley has generated enormous wealth, but the housing and transportation infrastructure investments that it takes to support that kind of economic expansion haven't been made. And as a result, those costs have fallen on communities where they appear in all the symptoms that you talked about, right? Which is the flight of the missing middle, high housing prices, in some cases people losing their homes and so forth, right? You know, and that's a huge problem. And so how do we fix it? I think we need to go, I think it's time to go back and make those kinds of investments. And cities are starting to figure out how to do this too, which I think is a really promising sign.
But they haven't necessarily always moved at a very fast pace. Many cities have been resistant. And Assemblymember Wicks, I know you're a co-author of SB 50, the very controversial housing bill. Why do you think that's necessary?
It's necessary because we haven't built enough homes that we need to, you know, and cities have not issued the number of amounts of permits that they need to. If you look at the statewide level, we have something called RENA goals, which is cities should be permitting housing at different levels, very low income, moderate, and above moderate. Most cities have not met those goals.
In Palo Alto, Mayor Filseth, you oppose SB 50.
I do. I think that, so first of all, the RENA targets is interesting because if you look at most cities in the South Bay have actually done okay on their market rate RENA targets, but we're way behind on our affordable targets. As far as SB 50 goes, we have actually, like most of the cities in the Silicon Valley, have started to do some of the things in SB 50. So for example, we eliminated all density restrictions on residential units on our high density transit corridor El Camino, some other places in town. We've moved to increase FARs, we've moved to reduce parking requirements. We haven't done all the things in SB 50, and I don't think any community has, but we've done other things that are not in SB 50. So we were actually experimenting with density minimums in some part of town, for example. So I think when you look at SB 50, you got to get past all the sort of the rhetoric and the scale of the problem, because everybody understands there's a problem. You got to look at does this policy provide enough incremental value on and above what cities are already doing or are going to do relative to its drawbacks in terms of taking away local flexibility? Because we don't implement one size fits all even within our town, right?
Assemblymember Wicks, I mean, what do you think of the points he's making?
I think our communities have not built enough homes, and I think SB 50 strikes at the heart of that issue and will enable us to build more homes that we need to. We also need to streamline the approval process. I think everyone agrees that we do have a supply and demand problem, and that's what these bills, and there are other ones like it, are aiming to do, is to give us the ability to actually build more homes. And I do think we have to do both things, build homes and guard against displacement. And I think often in the housing debate, those two things get pitted against each other, and I think we have to do both of those things.
And Mayor Fiesel, I have to ask you about this because it's the more affluent communities primarily that have come out against SB 50, and it does feel a little bit like NIMBYism to some folks, that you want to, not you in particular, but you know that the communities that are opposing this are engaging in sort of a drawbridge mentality to keep out lower income residents.
You know, I think in any community there's going to be some people that are going to say we don't need any more housing, we're full, and others are going to say, you know, we think single-family houses are immoral. And I think most people are in between. Nobody, I mean, our town, nobody wants to be a quote-unquote drawbridge town. Everybody understands the problem, okay? Nobody wants to lose socioeconomic diversity. They want to have, I mean, the hardest job we have in town to fill right now is cable and line splicer. These are the folks that climb up the utility pole in the middle of the night after the power goes on and solder the wires back together. Well, they can't afford to live here, right? We need those people here.
Buffy, there are dozens of housing bills being considered right now in the state legislature on the issue of housing. Is this a case of overreach by state politicians threatening the ability of cities to decide what is best for their communities?
Well, I can speak to my community. I have Mayor Libby Schaaf supporting all the bills that I'm working on, and she's also a supporter of SB 50, London Breed as well. So I think you have local electeds who are also
But the San Francisco Board of Supervisors is against SB 50, even though Mayor London Breed is okay with it.
Right, you know, but she is the mayor of this town and she's supportive, and I think you see a lot of local electeds, mayors in my district in particular, that are very supportive of SB 50 and a lot of the other housing legislation, because I think, you know, what we're seeing is we're responding to what we're seeing in our communities. We're seeing the gentrification and the displacement happening in a very negative way. You know, we're seeing the homelessness increase, so we have to respond to that. And so I think what you're seeing is action, and I think you also see the governor as well. He was very clear in terms of what he wanted to do as governor, and he was overwhelmingly elected to be governor, and that meant building more homes in our communities. So I think it's an appropriate response.
Is it appropriate, Mayor Filsteth, or is it overreach? Do you feel like the state is coming in and telling you in Palo Alto how to address the housing situation in your town?
Yeah, we do think it's overreach. I think, you know, local planning is sort of the foundation of how we do land use, and this gets in the way of that. In order to justify that, you have to go, well, local voters are either irresponsible or immoral or both. And I don't think that's an accurate view. Everybody's trying to solve the problem. And I wish that the state would work with us instead of against us.
All right, Assembly Member Buffy Wicks and also Palo Alto Mayor Eric Filsteth. Nice to have you both here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Now to the arts. Hailed as the world's longest running musical revue, Beach Blanket Babylon has been delighting audiences for decades.
San Francisco, open your golden gates. You let no stranger wait outside your door. San Francisco, here is your wandering one, saying I'll wander no more.
The show follows Snow White as she sings, dances, and encounters a zany cast of characters in a quest to find her Prince Charming. From its home in North Beach, the show has won legions of fans, including Queen Elizabeth, who caught a performance in 1983. But after 45 years, Beach Blanket Babylon will wear its final giant hat when it plays its last shows at the end of the year. Joining me now to mark the end of an era are the show's producer, Joe Schumann-Silver, and veteran cast member Shauna Ferris-McNulty, who has been with the show since 2004. So nice to have the both of you here.
Thanks for having us.
But I also have to say I'm so sad to have you here because of this reason. The show is closing. I've seen it numerous times. Each time it's different. Each time it's just so much fun. Joe, what has it been like for you now that the news is out about the show's closure this year?
It's been sad. Steve Silver, whose show it is,
Your husband.
I'm gonna cry. You're right.
Oh, your deceased husband, but he started the show. Yeah. Well, what?
And he said that I would know when the time was right for the show to close. And I never thought it was closed. But about 3 years ago, I just got this feeling. The show's amazing. It's great. And I really wanted to go out on top. And so I had to go through a process. And then I realized, if I start crying,
It's so close to you.
It was sad last
Yeah.
week when Joe had to make the announcement to us. You know, it was emotional, obviously, for everybody, but it's because there's so much love for this beach blanket family.
Joe, we happen to have some Kleenex right here, just for you.
Charlie gave me some coming
we
in.
keep one on hand. I want to give one to you, Shauna,
Okay.
just in
She
case you
won't
need
cry.
it later.
That's why you brought me.
But Shauna, you have played Snow White for at least 13 years. You've been with the show 15 years. How are you handling the fact that this is the end?
You know, it's super sad, of course, and I had my moments of tears, but as an actor in your life, you know, most actors, their shows come to an end. There is an end date, and we have been so lucky to be on this ride. All of us who've been there for whether it's 1 year to 25 to 30 years, you know, we've all had this awesome, steady job, and now we're experiencing that real moment that most actors experience, and it's the show closing, you know?
And Joe, when the show debuted in 1974, it was scheduled to run for less
6
than
weeks.
I know.
6 weeks.
And now here it is, the longest running musical revue in the world. Why do you think it's enjoyed such longevity?
You know, people ask me, and it's so good. I'm not just saying it because it's my show. It's very clever. We have the most talented people. It's visually beautiful. And you know you're going to see something new, something that you would have seen in the news that morning. You're going to see it on the stage that night.
Yeah, literally, it changes every night.
It changes as fast as we find something in the news that we think the audience will think it's relevant. It's really all about the audience. They determine what goes in and what doesn't go.
Is that nerve-wracking for you, Shauna? You get a set of instructions in the morning and you're told, have it ready by tonight.
I mean, we get really used to it. I think it's what makes it so fun and why people stay so long. You know, you don't get bored. It's gonna all change, and it, you know, even just lines or numbers, and that's what makes it really fun and unique.
And it's very collaborative. I mean, do you, the performers, get a chance to be part of the creative process?
Joe
Well-
and our director, yeah, they listen to our ideas.
We do listen.
Yeah.
It is a book show. There is a book.
But it's not a democracy.
That's what Steve used to say. This is not a democracy. You know, we run it, but are you kidding? We love hearing their ideas because they come up with great stuff. A lot of them, like Shauna, knows the show so well, knows the pace. And we love hearing ideas from everyone, but we definitely write the show, and it is a book show.
Yeah. Well, but at least you're a little more humane about the process. Steve Silver used to just...
He would, usually with Val Diamond, who could do anything.
Exactly.
He would just go up to her right before the show's going to start and said, here, I want this in. Put it in your hand. And she'd write it in her hand. And he said, Val, you could do it. And he'd walk away, and then she'd have to go out.
on stage, looking at the notes on her hand.
Looking at that, but he would never give anybody anything that he did not think they'd be able to do.
Yeah.
And we have great
a testament
people.
to the performers that you
we have
guys
the best
can do
performers
that.
in the world. Yeah.
We have fun, and even when we put something new in, and you know, the audience reaction is fun to listen to. I mean, sometimes we get a big groan, and I mean, we love a big groan. Like, you know, any reaction is a great reaction.
Yeah. Well, you know, the show has toured to Vegas, London. It opened at the Academy Awards. Queen Elizabeth, we saw earlier in that clip, has seen it. Liza Minnelli, Robin Williams. What are your favorite memories from the show, Joe?
Oh my God! I guess
So
when,
many,
when,
right?
when I can't even say when the Queen came on, we took the show to London. Everything. When I first saw the show in my whole life, I met Steve Silver. Everything, you know, everything has been fabulous. I can't say there's been one bad day.
Shauna?
I think for me, I was here when Prince Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles came, and that was incredible. It was an experience, and Joe and Kenny redid the whole show. We had special numbers. It was really exciting to be there for that.
Yeah. What will you miss most?
The people, the family, of course the show, but you know, it is this beach blanket family that's always, you know, we're used to it being there. And I
They're
think
all
it'll
so
be hard.
close too. A lot of them are really, really close.
Yeah, well, you've become like family
Yes.
after these years, and it's a show that's given performers great benefits, unheard of really in the industry. You know, health benefits, paid vacation, health care, retirement. Joe, for you, what do you think the legacy of the show will be?
I hope that everybody remembers it's a fabulous show.
Shauna?
I
Well, it's more
think
than just a fabulous
It's-
show.
You know,
It is an icon.
uniquely San Francisco. It really is something that you can only get here, and I think people will always remember that crazy zany show with big hats and, you know, miss it dearly and think back to all the fun memories and nights they had at Club Fugazi.
What's going to happen to the hats, by the way, after the show
Well,
ends?
I own all of this, and of course we can't just let it go.
No,
We're
that would be a
looking
shame.
at places like museum or something. We'll figure it out to have an exhibit to show it. Hopefully it'll be very successful and we could send it out to go to different places because it should never be forgotten.
Oh, the hats are so special. The
And the
whole
props,
show
everything,
is so
yeah.
special. All right, you're going to make me cry, Joe.
I know. I shouldn't be doing this.
Well, good luck to you both. And,
Thank you so much.
It is such a beloved show in the Bay Area. Joe Schumann-Silver and Shauna Ferris-McNulty, nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure you'll see it again.
Of course. I would not let the show end without seeing it again. Thank you, Joe. And that will do it for us. Beach Blanket Babylon, by the way, runs Wednesdays through Sundays at Club Fugazi in San Francisco. Tickets are still available right now at beachblanketbabylon.com. As always, you can find more of our coverage at kqed.org/newsroom. I'm Thuy Vu. Thank you for joining us.